In our previous video, we learned about classifying numbers, and some of those numbers were called irrational numbers. Today, we're going to estimate irrational numbers. This is level 14, stage 2, 8th grade math. Taking a look at the stage 2 overview for the villains, you need to know what is an irrational number. And for the cheat codes, how do you estimate a square root with a calculator? How do you estimate a square root without a calculator? How do you estimate a cube root with a calculator? And how do you estimate a cube root without a calculator? We're going to take a look at all of this in today's video. Vocabulary. Remember that irrational numbers cannot be written as fractions. Pi cannot be written as a fraction because it is a non-repeating, non-terminating decimal. An imperfect square root, like square root of 2, cannot be written as a fraction because they are non-repeating, non-terminating decimals. And imperfect cube roots, like the cube root of 5, cannot be written as a fraction because they are non-repeating, non-terminating decimals. So the whole point of estimating today is to kind of get an idea of how much a number is worth, even though it's not perfect. How do you estimate imperfect square roots? With a calculator. Step number 1, use the square root button on your calculator. It's going to look like this. It almost looks like a division sign with an X inside of it. That's the square root button. Write the whole number, step number 2, write the whole numbers in 2 places after the decimal. Step number 3, underline the tens place, which is right behind the decimal, and circle the number that's in the hundreds place, which is in the second number behind the decimal. If that number that you circled is between 0 and 4, you will round down. Drop the number that was circled and leave the number in the tens place alone. If the number you circled is between 5 and 9, you will round up the number that you underlined to the next digit up. Step number 4, estimate your answer to the nearest tenth. Example number 1, estimate the square root of 58 with a calculator. You're going to type in the number 58, you're going to hit the square root button on your calculator, and you're going to get this result, 7.61, and then a whole bunch of numbers after that. I want you to underline the 6. Write it down on your paper, underline the 6, and then circle the number 1 that's right behind it. Since 1 is between 0 and 4, you wouldn't round up the 6. We get rid of the 1, and your answer is approximately 7.6. Yes! Example number 2, estimate the negative square root of 19 with a calculator. The negative square root of 19 is approximately 4.35. You are going to underline the 3 because it's in the tens place. And then circle the 5, which is in the hundreds place. Since 5 is between 5 and 9, you're going to round the 3 up. And that is going to become a 4. That means that the negative square root of 19 is approximately negative 4.4. I give that 2 thumbs up. How do you estimate imperfect square roots without a calculator? Well, this is a little bit tougher. Step number 1, you're going to identify the closest perfect square root below the given square root. Step number 2, identify the closest perfect square root above the given square root. Step number 3, write the perfect squares as integers. Step number 4, estimate your answer to the nearest tenth. Example number 3, estimate the square root of 29 without a calculator. Well, the square root of 29 is between 2 perfect squares. The perfect square, square root of 25, is worth exactly 5, and the square root of 36 is exactly 6. If you add 25 plus 36, it adds up to 61. Cut 61 in half, and you get 30.5. That's the halfway point between 25 and 36. Since 29 is below 30.5, we can estimate that the square root of 29 is about 5.4. Easy peasy. Example number 4. Estimate the negative square root of 62 without a calculator. Well, the negative square root of 62 is between the negative square root of 64 and the negative square root of 49. The negative square root of 64 is negative 8, and the negative square root of 49 is negative 7. So our answer is going to be somewhere in between those two. If you add 64 plus 49, you get 113. Cut 113 in half, and you get 56.5. Since negative 62 is below negative 56.5 and very close to negative 64, we can estimate this to be about negative 7 9/10. Perfect. How do you estimate imperfect cube roots with a calculator? Step number 1, type in the cube root, hit the second button, it's a green button in the top left corner, then hit 0 on your calculator. The second function of 0 is cube root. Write the whole numbers and 2 places after the decimal. Step number 3, underline the tens place and circle the hundredths place. If that number that you circled is between 0 and 4, round down. If the number you circled is between 5 and 9, round up. And step number 4, estimate your answer to the nearest tenth. Example number 5, estimate the cube root of 827 with a calculator. We're going to type in 827, hit second, hit 0, and you get about 9.38. There's other numbers behind that, but that's all that we're worried about. You're going to underline the number 3, write it down on your paper, underline the number 3, then you are going to circle the 8, and since the number you circled is between 5 and 9, that means that you're going to round up the 3. So this 3 now becomes a 4. So the cube root of 827 is approximately 9.4. High five! Example number 6. Estimate the cube root of negative 33 with a calculator. Type in 33, hit the negative sign, hit second, hit 0, and you get approximately negative 3.20 with a whole bunch of numbers behind it. Underline the 2, circle the 0, and since 0 is between 0 and 4, you would not round up the 2. The cube root of negative 33 is approximately negative 3.2. Good job! How do you estimate imperfect cube roots without a calculator? Step number 1, identify the closest perfect cube root below the given cube root. Step number 2, identify the closest cube root above the given cube root. Step number 3, write the perfect cube roots as integers. Step number 4, estimate your answer to the nearest tenth. Example number 7, estimate the cube root of 16 without a calculator. The cube root of 16 is between two perfect cubes. The cube root of 8 is exactly 2, and the cube root of 27 is exactly 3, so it's somewhere between 2 and 3. If you add 8 and 27 together, you get 35. Cut that in half, you get 17.5. Since 16 is very close to 17.5, we can estimate our answer to be approximately 2.5. Makes you think. Example number 8, our final example. Estimate the cube root of 100 with a calculator. The cube root of 100 is between two perfect cubes. The cube root of 64 equals 4, and the cube root of 125 equals 5. If you add 64 and 125 together, you get 189. Cut that in half, you get 94.5. Since 100 is slightly above 94.5, we can estimate that this is about 4.6. Done and done. So you're probably wondering, why do we need to know this? Well, in level 17, you'll learn about the Pythagorean theorem. In that level, you'll have to solve for the length of the diagonal of a right triangle. That diagonal is called the hypotenuse. And sometimes the hypotenuse is an imperfect square root. So having this knowledge will give you a nice estimate of the value of that imperfect square root. In our motivational poster of the day, failure is not falling down, but refusing to get up. If you're a quitter, that means that you're a failure. But if you've made a mistake, you're not a failure until you've made the choice to not get up. Well, that's the end of our video for today. Please join us in our next video as we compare irrational numbers. We'll see you then. See ya!